Welcome to tonight's sleep story. Take a deep breath, close your eyes, and let go of the day. Allow yourself to relax and settle into a peaceful state as my voice gently guides you through a world of calm and tranquility. With each word, feel the tension slip away, leaving only relaxation and comfort. Let's drift into a soothing story together as you begin your journey into a restful and rejuvenating sleep. It was a quiet night, the kind where the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the mysteries of the past to reveal themselves. The dim light from a desk lamp cast long shadows across the room as you sat in your study, surrounded by ancient scrolls, maps, and books. Each one a piece of history, each one holding the secrets of civilizations long gone. The air smelled faintly of old paper and dust, a gentle reminder of the passage of time. The world outside was still. The hum of life that never stops had softened into the night, creating an atmosphere of peaceful solitude. As you flipped through the pages of a dusty journal, your fingers traced the faded ink of forgotten explorers and long-lost cities. Among them, one name kept returning, one city that always seemed to elude the grasp of history: Heliki. The mystery of its disappearance had fascinated scholars for centuries. Once a thriving, beautiful city that had honored Poseidon, Heliki had been wiped from existence in a cataclysmic event, lost to both time and the sea. Yet, despite its apparent destruction, echoes of its grandeur still whispered through the remnants of history. It was said that Heliki had vanished without a trace, sunk into the sea after a massive earthquake and tsunami struck the region. No ruins remained above the water's surface, and for centuries, the city's location remained a mystery. Scholars and adventurers had tried to solve the riddle, to uncover where the city once stood. But every attempt, every dive into the depths of the sea, seemed to lead only to more questions, never to answers. Still, the allure of the lost city remained. Its mystery called to you, pulling you into the narrative of what once was. As you sat there, immersed in the story of Heliki, a faint flicker of light danced on the edge of your vision. Was it the lamp? Or was it something else? Something more? Your mind wandered, imagining what it would have been like to walk the cobbled streets of Heliki, to gaze at the grand statues of Poseidon that once graced the city's grand plazas. Could there be more to the story of Heliki than the earth's violent shake and the sea's unforgiving pull? Was there something hidden in the depths, waiting to be uncovered? Could it be that the answer lay beneath the sea, waiting for someone like you to unearth the past? With a deep breath, you set the journal down and reached for a map of ancient Greece. Your eyes traced the lines, seeking any clue, any hint that could reveal the city's final resting place. You knew the odds were slim, but that was the thrill of the search, the excitement of chasing after something that had been lost for so long, the potential for discovery. And in that moment, a sense of adventure stirred within you. The world outside might have been dark and quiet, but here in the study, surrounded by the weight of history, a new journey was beginning. You had no idea where it would lead, but the pull of Heliki's mystery was irresistible, urging you to dig deeper, to keep searching, to continue the quest that had begun long before you had come across the journal. The study, the journal, and the map were the beginning, but the journey would take you farther than you ever imagined. As you sat in the stillness, your mind began to drift into the unknown, to the world beneath the sea, and the remnants of a lost civilization, waiting to speak its story once again. The soft rustling of the pages was the only sound as you leaned back in your chair, the map of ancient Greece spread before you like a vast, uncharted ocean. As you traced the coastline with your finger, your mind wandered to the mysteries hidden beneath the waves. The city of Heliki, lost to time, swallowed by the sea, and buried beneath centuries of sand, silt, and ocean currents. Its name had become a symbol of ancient secrets waiting to be unearthed. But what if the stories of its destruction were only part of the truth? What if the sea had not swallowed it whole, but rather hidden it, protecting its secrets for a future generation to discover? The waves whispered of the goddess Poseidon, god of the sea, the giver of both life and destruction. The city had once been a tribute to him, a magnificent place of worship and culture, with temples to honor the sea's power and mystery. It was said that the grandest of these temples, dedicated to Poseidon himself, stood at the heart of the city. Could it be that beneath the water's surface, remnants of those sacred walls still stood? Could Poseidon's statue still gaze toward the horizon, the sea, and the eternity he ruled over? The thought was captivating, almost too much to fathom. But you knew better than to let imagination run wild without grounding it in fact. Heliki's mystery wasn't just about what was lost. It was about what remained, what might still be hidden beneath the surface. With every piece of research, every clue uncovered, the possibility of rediscovering the city seemed a little more real, a little more tangible. The current of excitement began to build in your chest, pushing you to seek out the truth with more fervor than ever before. As you gazed at the map again, a flash of realization hit. The coast of Achaea, the region where Heliki had once thrived, was not far from modern-day cities, accessible by research vessels and exploration teams. You had read stories of underwater expeditions conducted by marine archaeologists and treasure hunters. It seemed that others had already ventured into these waters. Some had claimed to find fragments, pottery, and remnants of structures. Yet nothing definitive had ever emerged. There was no concrete evidence that would tell the full story of Heliki's disappearance and its possible rediscovery. Your fingers hovered over the map, tracing the contours of the ocean floor. You found yourself wondering, what if it wasn't just lost to time and disaster, but rather preserved, waiting for the right time, the right set of hands, to unearth it? What if the people of Heliki had left behind a message, hidden beneath the sea, for those willing to take the plunge and discover what had been left unsaid for centuries? It was a thought that filled you with wonder, but also determination. You couldn't just sit back and wonder. It was time to act, to follow the trail of clues that history had left scattered in its wake. The room around you faded as the sea took over your thoughts. You imagined standing on the deck of a research vessel, the salty breeze of the Aegean brushing against your face. Below the calm surface, the shadows of an ancient city waited, maybe even whispered, just beyond your reach. You could almost hear the faint murmur of distant voices, the echoes of a civilization that had been, for so long, silenced by the water's embrace. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for you to take the next step, to dive deeper, to uncover what had been hidden for millennia. The mystery of Heliki was not just a story to be read from a book. It was a call to action, an invitation to explore the unknown. It was a challenge, not just for the archaeologists who had come before you, but for you, too. The story of a lost city was waiting to be told, and you were the one who could help tell it. You closed your eyes for a moment, imagining the adventure ahead. The unknown was vast, but the possibilities were endless. All that remained was to begin the journey, a journey into the depths of history, to uncover the secrets of Heliki, and to hear the city's story once more. As dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight crept through the curtains, illuminating the cluttered desk, where maps and notes scattered across the surface. Your determination grew with each passing moment, as the weight of the mystery of Heliki called to you with an urgency you could no longer ignore. The time to act had arrived. The city of Poseidon, the lost city of Heliki, was waiting for discovery. You had spent countless nights researching, hypothesizing, and dreaming of this moment. And now, that dream was finally on the cusp of becoming reality. You gathered your notes and placed them in a folder, feeling the weight of the task ahead. The journey was not going to be easy. It would require extensive preparation, coordination, and most of all, patience. But the potential for uncovering Heliki, for answering the questions that had haunted historians and archaeologists for centuries, was worth every ounce of effort. You reached out to a network of experts in various fields, marine archaeologists, historians, and even local guides from the region. The first step was clear: organize a research expedition, one that would bring together all the minds necessary to begin the search for Heliki's remains. It was no longer just a task for one person. It would take a team of like-minded explorers, each with their own unique expertise, to delve into the heart of the mystery. As preparations began, Your mind remained focused on the search, not just for the city, but for the meaning behind its disappearance. What had happened to Heliki? Why had it been lost to the sea? Theories swirled, but the facts were still unclear. Was it truly swallowed by an earthquake and tsunami? Or was there more to the story? Had the city been abandoned before nature's wrath took hold? Or did the disaster come without warning, taking the city by surprise? There were so many questions, and you knew that every small detail mattered. You pored over the ancient accounts of Heliki's destruction once again, cross-referencing them with modern geological studies. The more you learned, the more the puzzle pieces seemed to fit together. But there was still so much unknown. How had the city been so completely lost? No one had ever found a single stone or artifact from the city, and yet the tales of its destruction were so vivid, so detailed. It seemed impossible that a city so grand could simply disappear from the face of the earth. As the team began to assemble, there was a palpable sense of anticipation in the air. You could feel it in your bones, the excitement of what lay ahead, but also the weight of the responsibility you now carried. You weren't just searching for a lost city. You were searching for the truth behind its fate. You were responsible for bringing that story back to life, for giving the lost city of Heliki a voice once more. Days later, you found yourself standing on the deck of a small research vessel, the salty wind tugging at your clothes as the crew prepared to set out on their first dive into the depths. The waters of the Aegean Sea stretched out before you, vast, still, and filled with the echoes of centuries of history. The sunlight glinted off the water's surface, and the air smelled faintly of brine and adventure. This was where it all began, where the mystery would either be solved or remain buried forever. The crew had spent weeks preparing, calibrating sonar equipment, and mapping the seabed. They had pinpointed a likely location, a place just off the coast of ancient Achaea, where the land dropped sharply into deep waters. The team's excitement was palpable, but so was the undercurrent of uncertainty. No one had ever found solid evidence of Heliki before. This could be the breakthrough they had all been waiting for, or it could be another false lead. As you stood there, staring out at the ocean, you could feel the weight of the past pressing down on you. It was as though the sea was holding its breath, waiting to release its secrets, to reveal the truth hidden beneath its waves. Your thoughts drifted back to the ancient accounts, the grand temples, the bustling markets, the rituals and festivals that had once brought the city to life. What had it been like to walk those streets, to stand before the temples to Poseidon? And now, you were the one about to uncover it all. The boat set sail into the vast expanse of blue. You could almost hear the whispers of those ancient people, carried on the wind, urging you forward. There was no turning back now. You had come this far, and the city of Heliki was waiting, just beneath the surface, its story buried in the depths of time. With every wave that passed, you felt closer to the answer. The journey was about to begin, and the sea would soon reveal its hidden past. The search for Heliki was no longer just an intellectual pursuit. It was becoming an obsession, a mission to give voice to a city lost to time. As the research vessel cut through the water, heading toward the mystery's heart, the excitement was undeniable. The journey to uncover the fate of Heliki was about to take its first steps. What lay ahead was unknown, but one thing was certain. The mystery of this lost city was about to unfold once again. The boat's engine hummed softly as it cut through the water, the horizon stretching endlessly ahead. The quiet calm of the sea was both inviting and eerie, as if the ocean itself was holding its breath, waiting for the secrets of Heliki to be unearthed. You stood at the bow, watching as the crew readied the sonar equipment for the first dive. The waters beneath seemed almost too calm, but you knew better than to be lulled by the serenity. Beneath the surface lay centuries of history, waiting for someone to reveal it. With a soft buzz, the sonar began to pulse, sending out signals that would bounce back from the ocean floor. For a moment, there was nothing but the low hum of the equipment and the steady rhythm of the waves. The team worked in silence, their eyes fixed on the monitors, watching for any signs of something unusual beneath the surface. It wasn't just about finding ruins, it was about finding the right pieces, the ones that would finally confirm the long-held belief that Heliki was out there, waiting to be rediscovered. Hours passed in quiet anticipation, each sonar scan offering only vague images of the deep, distorted by the murky waters. The crew was patient, methodical, accustomed to the long waits and quiet moments of uncertainty. But you couldn't shake the feeling that Heliki was close, that the city you had read about in ancient texts and dreamed of for so long was just beyond the reach of modern technology. As the team continued to scan, a sudden flicker on the monitor caught everyone's attention. The sonar had returned something different, something that seemed to stand out from the surrounding terrain. You leaned closer, your heart quickening as the image began to take form. It wasn't much, but it was a start. A faint outline beneath the ocean floor, a shadow that could be a foundation, or perhaps even the remains of a city wall. The excitement was palpable, but the air was thick with cautious optimism. It wasn't enough to declare a discovery yet, but it was something, and that was all that mattered. The captain signaled for the dive team to prepare. You felt a surge of anticipation as you watched the crew begin to lower the diving equipment, the divers slipping into the water one by one, their figures barely visible as they descended into the depths. You remained on the deck, eyes fixed on the water, knowing that every second that passed brought you closer to uncovering something extraordinary. As the divers descended, the minutes felt like hours. Your mind raced with possibilities. What would they find? Would this be the breakthrough you had been hoping for? Or would this too prove to be another dead end, a false hope lost beneath the waves? The silence was heavy, filled only with the gentle lapping of water against the boat. You found yourself holding your breath, as if the ocean itself might swallow your thoughts before they could take shape. After what felt like an eternity, one of the divers surfaced, his face hidden behind the oxygen mask, but his eyes wide with something you couldn't quite place. Was it excitement? Fear? It didn't matter. He gestured toward the others, and they began to surface one by one, their expressions filled with the same unspoken realization. This was different. Something had been found, something tangible, something that could confirm all the stories you had read, all the dreams you had nurtured. You could hardly wait as the divers climbed back onto the boat, bringing with them the first tangible evidence of Heliki's existence. With trembling hands, one of the divers unstrapped the equipment from his waist, revealing a fragment of stone, aged, weathered by time, but undeniably human in origin. It was a piece of something, a shard of a civilization long forgotten. As you took the fragment into your hands, the weight of its history seemed to pulse through your fingertips. This was not just a rock, it was a piece of Heliki, a piece of the lost city, its story and soul returning from the deep. The piece of stone was just the beginning. As the search continued, the crew began to uncover more fragments, each piece adding to the story of Heliki. Each shard of pottery, each broken wall, and each engraving told a story of a thriving city, of a civilization that had once been full of life, but had now been swallowed by the sea. The excitement on board the boat was palpable. The lost city was no longer just a legend. It was becoming a reality, piece by piece. You could feel it then, the weight of the moment. The sea had opened up its secrets, and you were the one who had discovered them. Heliki was no longer a city lost to time. It was a city on the verge of being reborn. The final pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming into place. The question that had haunted scholars for centuries was being answered right before your eyes. Heliki was real, and it was waiting to tell its story. As the days passed, the boat remained anchored near the site, its crew working tirelessly to uncover more fragments of the lost city. Each discovery brought a sense of euphoria mixed with disbelief. The buried secrets of Heliki were slowly being unearthed, piece by piece. The ocean, which had kept them hidden for centuries, was now yielding its treasures. Fragments of pottery with ancient designs, carved stones bearing inscriptions, and even the remnants of a temple structure began to emerge from the seabed. The more you examined each find, the clearer it became that you were standing on the edge of something truly remarkable. But it wasn't just the artifacts that captivated you. It was the stories that each fragment seemed to whisper. You held a shard of pottery in your hand, and for a moment, you could almost hear the faint murmur of ancient voices. People who had lived and breathed here, who had walked these very streets centuries ago. The pottery, the carvings, the fragments of architecture. They all spoke of a civilization that had once flourished, a culture that had revered the sea, and a people who had believed in the gods, particularly Poseidon. With each piece that surfaced, the questions grew. What had this city been like? How had it lived, thrived, and then disappeared so completely? Why had no one found it until now? The mystery of Heliki deepened with every discovery, and yet each new piece also brought you closer to the truth. You felt as if you were standing in the footsteps of history, walking through the ruins of a civilization that had been lost to time, but was now being resurrected through your hands. The divers continued their work, descending deeper and deeper into the sea, exploring further stretches of the ocean floor. Each dive revealed something new, a column buried beneath a bed of silt, a bronze artifact caught in the cracks of ancient stone, or even the outline of what appeared to be an entire building. It was as if the city was coming to life before your eyes, as if the sea itself had decided to reveal the story it had held for so long. The crew's excitement was infectious. There was a sense of awe that spread over the boat, a shared understanding that they were part of something greater than themselves, part of an endeavor that would change the way the world understood ancient history. Yet, amidst the excitement, there was also a sense of reverence. As each new artifact emerged, the team handled them with the utmost care and respect, understanding that these weren't just objects from the past. They were pieces of a culture, a way of life, and a memory that had been locked away in the depths of the sea. The weight of this responsibility pressed down on you, but it was a weight you carried willingly. Heliki had been waiting for someone to uncover its truth, and now, that someone was you. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the water, you stood at the bow of the boat, reflecting on the day's discoveries. The water, once so still, seemed to hum with the energy of Heliki's revival. The discoveries made that day were important, but you knew there was more to uncover, more to understand. The city was still holding secrets, and you couldn't help but wonder what else lay beneath the surface, waiting for the right hands to find it. In the quiet of the night, with the boat gently rocking in the water, you looked at the artifacts laid out before you, each one a piece of the puzzle. Your mind raced with possibilities. Were these pieces part of something even bigger? Was there a structure, a temple, or perhaps an underground passage waiting to be discovered? The thought filled you with anticipation and a deep sense of purpose. Every discovery was a step forward, but there was still so much more to uncover. Heliki was vast, and you were only beginning to scratch the surface. You knew that the search was far from over. There would be challenges ahead, there would be setbacks, and there would be moments when you wondered if you would ever fully understand the city and its people. But there was something about Heliki, something about the way it called to you from the depths, that made you believe this journey was worth every effort. Heliki wasn't just a city, it was a story, and you were the one to help it tell its tale once again. As the days wore on, the discoveries grew more profound, each piece adding another layer to the rich history of Heliki. The divers, with their specialized equipment, continued to comb through the seabed, the waves of the Aegean Sea now feeling more like a living, breathing entity than ever before. With every dive, the sea seemed to reveal more. Its ancient secrets, once swallowed whole by the tides, were being brought back to the surface. The most striking discovery came when the divers uncovered a massive stone column, weathered by time, but still standing proud among the rubble of what seemed to be a temple. This wasn't just any column. It was carved with intricate designs, symbols of Poseidon, the god of the sea. The fact that these symbols were so vividly preserved filled you with a sense of awe. The significance of this discovery was undeniable. It was a sign of Heliki's deep reverence for the sea god, and it made the connection between the people of the city and the ocean even more tangible. As the column was carefully brought aboard, its detailed carvings seemed to whisper of the past. The sea waves, the tridents, and the ancient seafaring motifs adorned the stone, reminding you of the city's pride in its maritime culture. With every groove and etching, you could almost hear the voices of the people who had once stood before this monument, offering prayers to the sea god. The discovery of the column was not just archaeological, it was spiritual. You felt the weight of centuries pressing in around you, as if you had touched something far more profound than just a relic of the past. You stood there, gazing at the column, trying to piece together its story. The city had worshipped Poseidon, but what had it meant for them to be so closely tied to the sea? Had Heliki's fall been inevitable, or was it an event triggered by the very forces they had revered? You couldn't help but wonder if there was more to Heliki's destruction than just a natural disaster. Could the city's fate have been sealed by their devotion to the sea? These were the thoughts that filled your mind as the boat continued to drift through the calm waters. The sea, which had once claimed the city, was now giving it back. The ocean had been silent for so long, its stories hidden beneath layers of water, sediment, and time. But now, it was speaking, and you were the one who had been chosen to listen. The team worked around you, excitedly cataloging the column's details, but your focus was on the sense of connection you felt with the people of Heliki. You wondered what it had been like to live in a city that revered the sea so intensely, to build its culture and its way of life around the tides, the waves, and the vast unknown. As you moved closer to the column, you imagined the ancient priests standing in front of it, chanting praises to Poseidon, calling for his protection and blessing. You could almost hear the murmurs of the crowd, feel the salt air against your skin. Later that night, after the excitement of the day's discovery had settled, you stood alone on the deck of the boat, staring out at the vast ocean. The water was calm, its surface smooth as glass under the light of the moon. The sea stretched endlessly before you, a reminder of how much of the world still lay beneath its depths, waiting to be uncovered. You had unearthed so much already, but you couldn't help but feel that there was still more hidden beneath the surface, still more stories waiting to be told. Heliki had been a beacon of life, a city that had flourished on the edge of the sea, yet in a twist of fate, it had been consumed by the very forces it had once revered. Could the sea truly be both a giver and taker, just as the people of Heliki had believed? You knew that the answers to these questions wouldn't come easily. The mystery of Heliki's disappearance was far from over. Yet the discoveries you had made so far, the symbols of Poseidon etched into the stones, had given you a sense of direction. Heliki's story was not just about the city's fall, but about its relationship with the sea, and the beliefs that had defined its people. As the sea stretched before you, silent and deep, you felt as though the city was still speaking, still trying to tell its story, and you were the one entrusted with its revelation. With the sea as your companion, you turned away from the deck and headed inside, eager to dive deeper into the history that had begun to resurface. You were not just a witness to history. You were becoming part of its unfolding story, a chapter that was still being written, one discovery at a time. As the boat sailed further into the night, you knew this was just the beginning of unlocking Heliki's secrets and understanding the forces that had shaped it. The sea was waiting, and so was Heliki. As the days slipped by, the discoveries grew ever more astonishing, each one adding a new layer to the story of Heliki. The city, once thought lost to the sea forever, was gradually revealing itself piece by piece. The more you learned about it, the more you realized how deeply intertwined Heliki's fate had been with the very sea it had worshipped. Poseidon, the god of the ocean, had been a central figure in their lives, a deity to whom they had dedicated their homes, their temples, and their hearts. And yet, as the sea had given life to the city, so too had it taken it away. The air on the boat had shifted. What had begun as a mission of discovery had now become a journey of reverence. Every piece of pottery, every stone, and every artifact felt more like a message, not just from the past, but from the very soul of the city itself. It was as if the ancient inhabitants of Heliki were speaking through the fragments they had left behind, telling you, urging you, to listen to their story, to understand what they had lost and what they had once valued above all else. You found yourself reflecting on the city's devotion to Poseidon, The way the sea had shaped not just their culture, but their identity. The columns, the temples, the seagoing vessels, all of it had been designed with the god of the ocean in mind. Their entire civilization had been a tribute to the power and mystery of the sea, its beauty and its danger. They had worshipped Poseidon as a protector and a force of nature, but had they ever stopped to consider that the same force they revered could one day become their undoing? As you pored over the artifacts, your thoughts wandered. Was there a lesson to be learned from their downfall? Was it a warning about the fragility of human existence, the precariousness of civilizations, no matter how great they seem at the time? The more you uncovered, the more you realized that Heliki wasn't just an ancient city. It was a symbol of the delicate balance between man and nature. One evening, after a particularly long day of uncovering artifacts from the ancient marketplace, you stood on the deck, gazing out at the quiet sea. The sky was painted in soft hues of pink and orange as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a calm light over the water. You could feel the gentle breeze on your face, carrying with it the salty scent of the ocean. The world around you felt peaceful, but there was an undercurrent of something ancient, something alive within the waves. It was as if the sea itself was watching you, waiting for you to understand. As the wind blew gently through your hair, you remembered the words of an old historian you had read about. The sea keeps its secrets a well. Those words resonated deeply with you now. You had found the pieces of the puzzle, yes, but the puzzle itself was far from complete. The story of Heliki was not just a story of destruction. It was a story of a people's deep connection with the ocean, of their reverence for the forces beyond their control. And it was this connection, this devotion, that had shaped the very fabric of their society. But as the sea continued to stretch before you, vast and unyielding, you couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more hidden beneath its depths. More to uncover, more to learn. The search for Heliki was not just about uncovering the city's ruins. It was about uncovering its soul, about understanding the relationship between its people and the forces they had worshipped, and perhaps discovering why they had been chosen to be swallowed by the very ocean they had adored. The days blurred together as you and your team dove deeper into the waters. Each dive brought new discoveries, new clues to the city's past. Yet, despite all the artifacts, all the broken stones and shattered pottery, there was still an emptiness that lingered. You were finding the city's physical remains, but you hadn't yet found the true heart of Heliki. What had this city truly been? What had it meant to its people? These questions haunted you. One afternoon, as you reviewed the latest findings, a quiet realization began to take root. Heliki wasn't just a city lost to history. It was a legacy, a piece of the ocean's heart. And to fully understand it, you had to listen to the ocean itself. The sea had kept its secrets for centuries, but now it was giving them back, piece by piece. The more you uncovered, the more you realized that the mystery of Heliki was more than just a historical enigma. It was a story of resilience, of faith, and of recovery. With the winds of the ocean filling the sails, you looked forward to the next dive, knowing that there was still so much more to uncover. The city of Heliki, once lost to the sea, was slowly being returned to the world. And with every discovery, you were uncovering more than just stone and pottery. You were uncovering the spirit of a civilization that had long ago vanished beneath the waves. Days turned into weeks, but the mystery of Heliki seemed to deepen with every new discovery. The team had unearthed more fragments of pottery, portions of intricate stonework, and even the foundations of what appeared to be the central temple to Poseidon. But something was still missing, a piece of the puzzle that eluded your grasp. Despite the tangible progress, there was an unshakable feeling that you hadn't yet uncovered the true essence of Heliki. The ocean had been generous, yes, but it had also remained guarded. It was as if the sea was only willing to reveal just enough to tempt you, never quite giving you the full picture. And yet, with every artifact uncovered, the city's story seemed to come alive more and more. The ancient walls, the carved stones, each artifact felt like a whisper from a past that had been silenced too soon. One evening, as the sun began its slow descent beneath the horizon, painting the sky in soft hues of purple and gold, the team gathered on the deck. The day had been spent cataloging the latest finds, but everyone seemed to sense that something was different. The sea, too, seemed quieter than usual, as if it were waiting for something. The stillness of the air hung heavy, like the calm before a storm, but you felt that this calm wasn't one of tension. It was one of anticipation, like the sea had been holding its breath, waiting for something, waiting for you. You stood near the edge of the boat, gazing out over the still waters. The gentle ripples of the ocean's surface barely disturbed the smooth expanse, and the soft breeze carried with it the salt of the sea, the smell of history. The sense of connection between the lost city of Heliki and the ocean had never felt more powerful. You couldn't help but feel as though the city, with all its splendor and wisdom, was still alive in the depths, pulsing with the heartbeat of the ocean, waiting to be fully revealed. A few of the crew members gathered near the sonar equipment, their eyes fixed on the monitor. You joined them, curiosity bubbling inside you. There it was again, a faint pulse on the screen. Unlike anything you'd seen before, the pulse seemed to align with the previous discoveries. It wasn't just a random anomaly. This was something more significant, something that could hold the key to Heliki's heart. You turned to the captain, who nodded, signaling the dive team to prepare. The crew worked quickly but with quiet focus, the familiar hum of the equipment setting the stage for the next step in the journey. You could feel the anticipation rise among the crew as they prepped the gear. This could be it, the moment you had been waiting for. The deep, mysterious silence of the sea seemed to echo your thoughts, urging you forward, telling you that the time had come to uncover the last piece of the city's story. As the divers prepared for their descent, you couldn't help but reflect on the profound connection between Heliki and Poseidon. The city had been built with the god of the sea at its center, a symbol of their reverence for the forces that governed the oceans, and the life that thrived in its depths. But the more you uncovered, the more you realized that Poseidon's influence extended far beyond the worship of a deity. The sea had been their sustainer, their protector, and ultimately, their destructor. This city, with its grand temples and rich culture, had been woven into the very fabric of the ocean, its rise and fall dictated by the tides of fate. The divers slowly descended into the dark waters, the only sound the soft splash of the bubbles rising to the surface. You stood at the edge of the boat, watching them disappear beneath the water. The world seemed to hold its breath, as if the sea itself were waiting for you to uncover its secrets. The team remained quiet, focused, as if they too could feel the weight of the minutes passed like hours, and you could hardly stand the stillness, the tension growing with every passing second. Then, the first diver resurfaced, his expression unreadable. He gave a slight nod before signaling for the others to surface. One by one, the team members emerged, their faces lit by the dim light of the boat. There was no outward excitement, but the sense of accomplishment was undeniable. This wasn't just another dive. This was the discovery you had all been waiting for. The diver stepped forward, holding something in his hand, a fragment of stone, worn by time, but unmistakably part of something larger. The excitement on the crew's faces was impossible to contain. You reached for the fragment, carefully turning it over in your hands. It was carved, beautifully crafted, a piece of Heliki's heart, its story captured in stone, waiting to be understood. With a deep breath, you knew that the city's secrets were no longer buried beneath the waves. The journey was far from over, but each discovery, each whisper of Heliki's past, was another step toward unlocking its full story. As the sea gently rocked the boat beneath the moonlit sky, you felt the weight of history settling around you. The journey was no longer just about uncovering artifacts. It was about reviving the heartbeat of Heliki, a civilization that had once thrived, now reborn through your hands. The days that followed felt like a blur, filled with an intoxicating mixture of excitement and calm reverence. The discovery of the stone fragment was a breakthrough, but it was merely one small piece of a much larger puzzle. Every new artifact unearthed, every carving, every shard of pottery, brought you closer to understanding the grandeur of Heliki. The city, once thought to be a mere legend, was beginning to resurface, its remnants slowly rising from the depths, speaking to you in whispers of ancient wisdom. As the team continued its work, the crew members could sense the shift in the atmosphere. There was no longer just the thrill of exploration. There was a deeper sense of responsibility, as though they were not simply discovering a lost city, but instead were the caretakers of its legacy. The ocean had held these secrets for centuries, and now it was their turn to bring those secrets to light, piece by piece. You spent your evenings reflecting on what the discoveries meant. With each new item that surfaced, you felt yourself connected more deeply to the people of Heliki, to their belief in the sea, their worship of Poseidon, and their faith in the forces that governed their lives. It was clear now, Heliki had not just been a city of buildings and structures. It had been a city of spirit, where the land, the sea, and the gods were one. The people of Heliki had seen the world as a living entity, where the natural and divine were interwoven, and their faith had shaped their entire existence. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, casting a warm golden hue over the ocean, the divers returned with more finds, larger pieces of stone, what appeared to be a statue's fragment, and most remarkably, a carved stone slab inscribed with symbols you hadn't seen before. The symbols were intricate, layered in a way that spoke of something both ancient and sophisticated. As you examined them, a sense of awe swept over you. These weren't just random marks, they were messages, inscriptions that had been left for future generations. For you. As you carefully transcribed the symbols, you felt as though you were reading a message from the past, as though the city itself was speaking through the stone. What it said was still unclear, but the more you looked, the more you realized that these inscriptions were not just about worship. They were about something deeper, something more intimate, the connection between the people and their environment, between the divine and the earthly, between life and the inevitable forces of nature. This was a blueprint for life, encoded in stone and preserved in the depths of the sea. The discovery of the carved slab felt like a defining moment. It wasn't just the sheer scale of the find or the rarity of the artifact. It was the knowledge that the city's true story was finally beginning to emerge. The connection between Heliki and Poseidon was clearer than ever, but it was also more complex. The sea had not just shaped their worship, it had been central to their very existence. Without the sea, Heliki would not have been born, and without the sea, it could not have thrived. That night, as you stood alone on the deck, the moonlight shimmering across the water, you thought about the people of Heliki once more. You imagined them gathered by the sea, their faces lit by torches, offering prayers to Poseidon, their voices carried away by the wind. You could almost hear the chants, see the figures kneeling in devotion to the god they had revered so deeply. As the boat rocked gently in the waves, you felt something stirring inside you, a deep respect for the city's past, but also an overwhelming sense of gratitude. You were not just uncovering history. You were participating in it, reviving it, making it alive again. With every artifact you discovered, with every symbol you translated, you were breathing life into Heliki, bringing it back to the world of the living. The work ahead was still vast. There were many more mysteries to solve, many more pieces of the puzzle to find. But for the first time, you felt a sense of peace, a quiet confidence that the answers were within reach. The city was waiting, and you had become a part of its story once more. As the night stretched on, you made your way back to your cabin, a sense of calm settling over you. The quiet hum of the boat was the only sound, and for the first time in weeks, you allowed yourself to relax. Heliki's pulse had returned, and you could feel it in your bones. The sea had held its secrets for too long, but now the time had come for them to be shared once more. Heliki was no longer a city of the past. It was a city reborn, its story resurrected in the quiet depths of the sea. And as you drifted off to sleep that night, you knew that the journey was only just beginning. The morning mist had barely lifted when the team prepared for the most significant dive yet. The discoveries from the past few days had ignited a fire of anticipation, but this next exploration felt different. This dive held the potential to uncover something monumental, something that would not only confirm Heliki's existence, but also reshape everything you thought you knew about the ancient city. The sonar equipment had been calibrated, and the divers were ready. There was a palpable sense of tension in the air. Everyone understood the stakes of this dive. The ship bobbed gently in the water, the sound of waves lapping against its sides almost meditative. Yet the energy on board was anything but calm. You could feel the electricity in the air, the collective excitement that surged among the crew as they prepared to lower the divers into the sea. As the first diver slipped beneath the water's surface, you stood at the bow, watching intently as the team descended into the depths. The dark water seemed to swallow them whole, their silhouettes disappearing into the abyss. There was no telling what they might find, no telling what secrets lay in the darkness. But there was something about this particular dive that felt like it could change everything. For years, scholars and explorers had searched for Heliki, and now it was on the verge of being unveiled. Minutes passed like hours. The stillness on the deck was broken only by the soft hum of the equipment and the occasional rustling of papers. You stared out into the ocean, lost in thought. Your mind raced through everything you had learned so far, the fragments of pottery, the inscriptions on the carved stone, and now the discovery of the Poseidon statue fragment. Each clue had been like a heartbeat, and together they were forming the rhythm of the city, the pulse of a civilization that had been silenced for so long. Then a voice crackled over the intercom. It was the lead diver. There was something down there, something big. You could hear the excitement in his voice, but there was also a hint of awe. His words were clipped, breathless, as he described what he was seeing. Columns, pillars, and mosaics, ancient and beautiful, resting on the seafloor. He couldn't say for sure, but it seemed as though they had found a temple that had been lost to the sea for centuries. Your heart raced. This was what you had been waiting for. The city of Heliki was not just a collection of scattered fragments. It was a thriving city, and now they had found its heart. The idea of an underwater temple, a place where ancient worshippers had gathered to honor Poseidon, was both humbling and awe-inspiring. Minutes later, the divers surfaced with more fragments, pieces of stone carved with intricate designs, pieces of mosaic tile depicting the gods, and shards of what seemed to be part of a temple wall. Each piece was carefully brought aboard the boat, and you couldn't help but marvel at their beauty and detail. The craftsmanship was unlike anything you had seen before. The materials were worn, yes, but still, the vibrant colors of the mosaics seemed to glow even in their aged state. These were not just fragments of a lost city. These were testaments to the artistry and devotion of the people who had once lived there. The more you examined the pieces, the more you could see the grandeur of the city unfolding before your eyes. The carvings were of Poseidon, his trident raised high, with waves and sea creatures adorning the edges of the stone. The craftsmanship was exquisite, reflecting a deep understanding of both art and spirituality. The people of Heliki had not simply built a city, they had created a place that breathed with their reverence for the sea and the gods. You felt as if you were standing at the crossroads of history. The city that had once flourished, so full of life and faith, was now speaking to you through the fragments it had left behind. It wasn't just a discovery. It was an invitation to understand the spirit of a civilization that had been so deeply connected to the forces of nature, to the ocean that had both sustained and ultimately destroyed them. As the day faded into night and the crew gathered to review the day's discoveries, you stood on the deck, gazing at the horizon. The ocean stretched out before you, a vast, endless expanse, and beneath that surface, a world of history lay waiting to be unearthed. The temple they had found, the pieces they had gathered. It was only the beginning. Heliki was still speaking, still revealing its story, and you were the one to help it find its voice once more. The excitement and sense of purpose that filled the crew was palpable. There was no doubt now. This journey had become more than just an exploration. It was a calling, an invitation to connect with the past in a way that few could ever imagine. The city of Poseidon had been waiting for this moment, for someone to discover its truth. And now, that someone was you. The journey to uncover the secrets of Heliki had only just begun. The sea was still full of mysteries, full of stories to be uncovered, and you would be the one to bring them back into the light. The days that followed were filled with a quiet urgency, each discovery pushing you deeper into the mystery of Heliki. The fragments, the temple, and the monumental discoveries were only the beginning. The surface had barely been scratched. Every morning, you felt the pull of the sea beckoning you to explore further, to uncover the untold stories that remained buried beneath the waves. But with each dive, you also felt the weight of the task at hand. The discoveries were more than just artifacts. They were the keys to unlocking a long-lost world, one that had been swallowed by time and the very forces it had worshipped. The crew worked tirelessly, their excitement tempered by the heavy responsibility they now carried. The discovery of the temple had shifted their focus. It wasn't just about finding remnants of a city. It was about preserving the city's legacy. The team was meticulous, cataloging every shard, every inscription, every carving that they brought to the surface. You could see the care in their eyes, the understanding that they weren't just uncovering pieces of stone. They were resurrecting a lost world, a world whose story had been hidden beneath the surface for centuries. As the research vessel sailed farther into the bay, the horizon seemed to stretch endlessly before you, a reminder of the vastness of the ocean and the countless mysteries it held. The sea was a living, breathing entity, and you were just beginning to realize how little you truly understood it. The more you uncovered about Heliki, the more you felt as though the city's history was tied to the very rhythm of the ocean itself, a rhythm that was now awakening once more. But despite the growing sense of discovery, there was something haunting about it all. The stillness of the sea at night, the quiet hum of the boat as it cut through the water, and the dark abyss beneath. It was as though the ocean itself was waiting for something. Every discovery, while exciting, also carried with it a sense of incompleteness, as if something was being held back, something deeper was yet to be uncovered. Late one evening, as the crew gathered around the table, reviewing the latest sonar scans, a sense of unease settled over the group. The images on the screen were clearer now, more defined, and there was something unmistakably large in the depths. A structure, possibly a building, or an even more significant temple complex. But there was a strange absence in the scans, something that didn't quite match the rest of the ocean floor. It was a subtle difference, one that might have been missed by anyone else, but to you, it felt like a call, a whisper from the sea, urging you to dive deeper. The team exchanged glances, their faces a mix of excitement and uncertainty. They were eager to explore the newly detected structure, but there was something else beneath the surface. An intangible feeling that you couldn't quite shake. Something was waiting down there, something that hadn't yet been revealed. The ocean seemed to pulse with its secrets, and you knew that the journey ahead would be unlike any you had experienced before. The next morning, the crew prepped for another dive. This time, they would descend even further into the heart of the anomaly the sonar had detected. There was a quiet tension on the boat, a collective understanding that what lay ahead could either be a breakthrough or another challenge, another obstacle to overcome. You stood on the deck, staring out at the water, the same sense of anticipation building in your chest. The sea was different now, its mysteries no longer confined to the depths, but now laid out before you, waiting to be understood. The divers descended slowly, their figures vanishing into the murky depths. As you stood there, waiting, the sun rose higher, casting golden light across the water. The contrast between the light above and the darkness below seemed symbolic. A transition from the known to the unknown, from the surface to the depths of history. You could feel the weight of time pressing down on you, the knowledge that the story of Heliki was about to take another turn, that the ocean was ready to reveal another secret. The silence stretched for what seemed like an eternity. The crew members moved about the deck, working quietly, but there was an urgency to their actions. They knew what was at stake. And then, The first diver surfaced, his face masked with disbelief. He didn't need to say anything. His expression told you all you needed to know. The temple, the structure they had been scanning, had exceeded all expectations. It wasn't just another fragment of stone or broken column. It was something bigger, more elaborate than anything they had discovered before. This was no longer just a city or a lost settlement. It was a cultural epicenter, a place of great importance to the ancient people of Heliki. As the team carefully brought the artifacts aboard, each piece more incredible than the last, you knew that this discovery would change everything. Heliki was no longer a dream, a myth to be debated and speculated about. It was a reality, its pulse beating once more, rising from the depths to tell its story. The city was alive again, and you were the one who had brought it back to the surface. The ocean had kept its secrets for centuries, but now it was ready to share them. Heliki was no longer lost. It was waiting to be remembered. The days that followed were filled with a quiet urgency, each discovery pushing you deeper into the mystery of Heliki. The fragments, the temple, and the monumental discoveries were only the beginning. The surface had barely been scratched. Every morning, you felt the pull of the sea, beckoning you to explore further, to uncover the untold stories that remained buried beneath the waves. But with each dive, you also felt the weight of the task at hand. The discoveries were more than just artifacts. They were the keys to unlocking a long-lost world, one that had been swallowed by time and the very forces it had worshipped. The crew worked tirelessly, their excitement tempered by the heavy responsibility they now carried. The discovery of the temple had shifted their focus. It wasn't just about finding remnants of a city. It was about preserving the city's legacy. The team was meticulous, cataloging every shard, every inscription, every carving that they brought to the surface. You could see the care in their eyes, the understanding that they weren't just uncovering pieces of stone. They were resurrecting a lost world, a world whose story had been hidden beneath the surface for centuries. As the research vessel sailed farther into the bay, the horizon seemed to stretch endlessly before you, a reminder of the vastness of the ocean and the countless mysteries it held. The sea was a living, breathing entity, and you were just beginning to realize how little you truly understood it. The more you uncovered about Heliki, the more you felt as though the city's history was tied to the very rhythm of the ocean itself, a rhythm that was now awakening once more. But despite the growing sense of discovery, there was something haunting about it all. The stillness of the sea at night, the quiet hum of the boat as it cut through the water, and the dark abyss beneath. It was as though the ocean itself was waiting for something. Every discovery, while exciting, also carried with it a sense of incompleteness, as if something was being held back. Something deeper was yet to be uncovered. Late one evening, as the crew gathered around the table, reviewing the latest sonar scans, a sense of unease settled over the group. The images on the screen were clearer now, more defined, and there was something unmistakably large in the depths. A structure, possibly a building, or an even more significant temple complex. But there was a strange absence in the scans, something that didn't quite match the rest of the ocean floor. There was a subtle difference, one that might have been missed by anyone else. But to you, it felt like a call, a whisper from the sea, urging you to dive deeper. The team exchanged glances, their faces a mix of excitement and uncertainty. They were eager to explore the newly detected structure, but there was something else beneath the surface, an intangible feeling that you couldn't quite shake. Something was waiting down there, something that hadn't yet been revealed. The ocean seemed to pulse with its secrets, and you knew that the journey ahead would be unlike any you had experienced before. The next morning, the crew prepped for another dive. This time, they would descend even further into the heart of the anomaly the sonar had detected. There was a quiet tension on the boat, a collective understanding that what lay ahead could either be a breakthrough or another challenge, another obstacle to overcome. You stood on the deck, staring out at the water, the same sense of anticipation building in your chest. The sea was different now, its mysteries no longer confined to the depths, but now laid out before you, waiting to be understood. The divers descended slowly, their figures vanishing into the murky depths. As you stood there, waiting, the sun rose higher, casting golden light across the water. The contrast between the light above and the darkness below seemed symbolic, a transition from the known to the unknown, from the surface to the depths of history. You could feel the weight of time pressing down on you, the knowledge that the story of Heliki was about to take another turn, that the ocean was ready to reveal another secret. The silence stretched for what seemed like an eternity. The crew members moved about the deck, working quietly, but there was an urgency to their actions. They knew what was at stake. And then, the first diver surfaced, his face masked with disbelief. He didn't need to say anything. His expression told you all you needed to know. The temple, the structure they had been scanning, had exceeded all expectations. It wasn't just another fragment of stone or broken column. It was something bigger, more elaborate than anything they had discovered before. This was no longer just a city or a lost settlement. It was a cultural epicenter, a place of great importance to the ancient people of Heliki. As the team carefully brought the artifacts aboard, each piece more incredible than the last, you knew that this discovery would change everything. Heliki was no longer a dream, a myth to be debated and speculated about. It was a reality, its pulse beating once more, rising from the depths to tell its story. The city was alive again, and you were the one who had brought it back to the surface. The ocean had kept its secrets for centuries, but now it was ready to share them. Heliki was no longer lost, it was waiting to be remembered. The following days passed in a whirlwind of excitement, the discoveries mounting one after another. But it wasn't just the artifacts themselves that filled you with awe. It was the story they were telling. Each stone, each broken column, and each carved fragment seemed to pulse with the life of a civilization long forgotten. A civilization that had been buried beneath the waves, but was now being resurrected, piece by piece. As the divers continued their explorations, they uncovered more sections of what appeared to be a massive temple complex. The structure was far more intricate than anything you had imagined, its walls adorned with elaborate mosaics depicting Poseidon and the creatures of the sea. Each new discovery was a revelation, each artifact a clue to the cultural and spiritual depth of the people who had once inhabited this lost city. The images and symbols were more than mere decorations. They told the story of a people whose very existence had been tied to the sea, whose fate had been shaped by the god they had worshipped, and whose legacy was now being brought back to the surface. You couldn't help but marvel at the mastery of the craftsmanship. It was as if the very essence of the sea had been captured in these stone and ceramic fragments, the strength and power of Poseidon woven into every piece. The city had been a place of devotion, yes, but also a place of art, creativity, and innovation. The mosaics were not just beautiful. They were testaments to the people's skill and their understanding of the world around them. They had been inspired by the ocean's power, its unpredictability, and its beauty. But they had also embraced it, woven it into their culture. As the discoveries continued, the sense of awe only deepened. The city was alive again, not just in the pieces that were being uncovered, but in the connection you felt to it. You were no longer just a witness to history. You were a part of it. Each new artifact was a conversation, a message from the past that had been waiting for centuries to be heard. Late one night, as the boat gently rocked under the star-filled sky, you stood alone on the deck, staring out at the sea. The water was calm, its surface reflecting the light of the full moon like a mirror. The waves lapped softly against the boat, the only sound in the quiet night. You thought about Heliki, about the people who had once lived here, worshipped here, and then disappeared beneath the sea. What had their lives been like? What dreams and hopes had they had before the ocean swallowed them whole? And yet, as you stood there, you realized that Heliki had not truly been lost. It had merely been waiting, hidden beneath the surface, for someone to uncover it, to remember it. The city had survived, not just in ruins and fragments, but in the collective memory of the sea, in the whispers of the ocean waves that had kept its story alive. And now, it was you who had unlocked that story, piece by piece. The following morning, the final piece of the puzzle emerged. The divers had found a massive stone tablet, buried deep beneath the temple's ruins. It was engraved with symbols you hadn't yet encountered, intricate markings that seemed to tell a story of the city's rise and fall. It was a narrative, one that chronicled the city's greatness and its eventual destruction, a tale of prosperity, of devotion, and of the forces of nature that had claimed it. This was the final chapter in the story of Heliki, and it was now in your hands. The tablet was carefully brought aboard, and as you ran your fingers over its surface, you could almost hear the city's story unfolding, the voices of the people who had once walked its streets, the whispers of their hopes and fears, carried to you across time. You felt a deep sense of peace wash over you, knowing that you had brought Heliki's story back to life. It had taken centuries for the ocean to release its secrets, but now the city would never be forgotten again. The discovery had not just been about finding a lost city. It had been about reconnecting with a piece of human history, about bringing the past into the present, and about ensuring that the city's spirit would continue to live on. As the team gathered around, the final discovery in hand, you knew that the work was far from over. There would still be much to do, much to understand, and much to learn from the remnants of Heliki. But for now, you stood at the crossroads of history and future, knowing that you had accomplished something that few would ever experience. The city had been lost, but now it was found, and its legacy was yours to carry forward. The sun began to rise, casting a warm, golden light over the water. The sea, which had once claimed the city, now seemed to be cradling it in its embrace. You felt the wind on your face, the salt in the air, and the weight of the city's story settle in your heart. Heliki was not just a city. It was a reminder that the past is never truly lost, and that every discovery carries with it the potential to shape the future. And as the boat sailed on into the horizon, you knew that the journey was just beginning.